What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, December 13th, 2016, getting into the middle of the month here, coming up on Christmas, coming up on the Electoral College, coming up on the first official day of winter. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Getting right on into it, the latest from Clinton-Mageddon is this battle for a soft coup d'etat against Donald Trump is continuing. And a lot of people are starting to really put it in the context of Donald Trump against the CIA and Donald Trump against the establishment. Article over at Veterans News Now, Trump's showdown with the CIA, and this bogus story about Russian hacking, which, as it turns out, is entirely circumstantial and based on a single anonymous source. Now, not that I'm a big fan of the CIA, but there's something you all need to keep in mind. Over the last 3 decades, the Clintons have acquired incriminating information on anybody in positions of power. And because of that Operation Screwworm out of Arkansas to Nicaragua in the mid-1980s, Hillary Clinton is in a position to blow the whistle on the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency has been a major importer of illegal drugs into this country, into the streets of America, into the hands of our children. So it isn't that the CIA is supporting Hillary Clinton. I think they would rather that she just faded off into the sunset and offended no more. But Hillary has the CIA by the short and curlies over that cocaine smuggling that was going on to fund the gun running into Nicaragua back in the 1980s that eventually blew up and became the Iran-Contra scandal. And Congress was forced to have hearings, but they only did a limited hangout. They acknowledged the gun running, and they tried to sort of tangle up Iran with all of this in the hostage situation. But the one part of the story that was kept under wraps, the part of the story the government never admitted to, was that all of that was being funded by cocaine money, because that smuggling operation into Nicaragua was illegal, was a violation of the Bolin Amendment and the Logan Act. And so Congress was not approached for any funding and wouldn't have authorized the funding anyway. So the CIA just got involved in the drug trade. Nothing new there. They were doing it with heroin back during Vietnam. And Hillary Clinton can blow the whistle on all of that. And that's why the CIA is working so hard to try and overturn the Trump election. It's not that they like her. Quite the contrary. But Hillary Clinton has got much of official established Washington by the tender places. And I will make a prediction here. On the day when it finally sinks into Hillary Clinton's little brain that she's not going to get that White House, she's going to start wrecking careers. We may see some of the top politicians and officials of this country literally skedaddle to places without extradition. That's how bad it's really going to be. Now, before we get into it a little more, I want to wander off on a little side issue. As you know, over the past couple of weeks, I've been talking about Lee Remini's program on Scientology, what happens after you try and leave the church. I had mentioned this other HBO documentary, Going Clear, about the Scientologists, and I guess somebody thought it would be funny to put my name on the mailing list for the Church of Scientology, so I'm starting to get junk mail from the Church of Scientology of Los Angeles, and get this, it's the Spanish language version, a language I neither read nor write and can barely speak. I'm really impressed with you guys over at the Church of Scientology. Very, very, very perceptive you are. Now then, getting on back to this Russian hacking situation, this is already starting to come apart. The Republican Party is now out there demanding that the CIA must make public any hard evidence they have that Russia has intervened in this election in any way. So far, it's innuendo, it's rumor, it's an anonymous source. The CIA is now saying they did not actually, in fact, send a secret report to Congress. We don't know where that came from. Washington Post carried it as the gospel truth. It's all Russia's fault, you know. I can already see what's going to happen. Kids are going to start going into school and telling their teachers, remember the dog used to eat their homework? No more. No, Russia stole my homework. That's going to be the new excuse. And they're demanding evidence, and they should have evidence. Now, interestingly enough, the Director of National Intelligence has come on out saying they do not support the CIA's claims of Russia hacking the U.S. election because there is no evidence whatsoever, and the FBI concurs. And there's something very interesting buried in this, because as you know, Donald Trump had been talking about the DNI no longer being a cabinet position. So the DNI would be thinking, well, you know, if Hillary's going to be the president, this is still going to be a cabinet position, and so forth and so on. But basically they're coming on out and defending Trump against the CIA's allegations. And what that tells me is that probably all of the electors are under surveillance, and the DNI knows that Hillary Clinton is not going to get the 38 faithless electors she needs to steal the White House. And so they're basically out there saying, see, there's a need for a DNI. It needs to be a cabinet position to protect the White House against our internal threats, so forth and so on. We're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Now, Judge... let's see. Let me just type a quick message to our control room here. Now, Judge Andrew Napolitano is out there saying that, as far as he can tell, the NSA knows Russia did not interfere with the election. Now, the entire claim that Russia was hacking the election is based on the claim that Russia was responsible for the DNC email leaks. That's the entire basis for it. There is no evidence for it whatsoever. And Napolitano is saying the NSA knows Russia did not interfere with the election because it wasn't a hack, it was an internal leak. And we're getting that from all different kinds of people here. And Ron Paul's just come right out and said, do we believe Edward Snowden and Julian Assange or John McCain and Lindsey Graham? And obviously that's almost a study in foregone conclusions. Of course we're going to take Snowden and Assange, especially over Songbird McCain and I Love Israel Graham. Now, Paul Joseph Watson is saying the reason for this sudden scream about Russia hacking the election is apparently because the effort to intimidate the electors, to threaten them to vote for Hillary, has failed utterly. Now, back when it looked like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania were in play and could be locked up, the electoral gap was very narrow, but that whole recount nonsense failed miserably. It's even backflashed a little bit. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And so the magic number for Hillary Clinton is 38. She needs to get 38 electors who are pledged to Donald Trump to vote for her. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And that's why they're out there saying, if you vote for Trump, you're a Russian stooge. You're a traitor if you don't vote for Hillary Clinton. And they're thrashing around, and it's really not very effective whatsoever. And, I mean, we're seeing all these articles coming out of, like, Blacklisted News. Former British ambassador says Russian election hack conspiracy theory is Kafkaesque. And if you're not familiar with the plays of Kafka, the situations were always one of complete hopelessness of the individual in the face of an out-of-control bureaucracy. You're on trial for a crime. You don't know what it is they say you've done. You've got no way of defending yourself. And it is that completely out of control. Now, more and more U.S. intelligence veterans are coming on out and saying that this claim about Russia hacking is not holding up. And they're saying basically under normal circumstances, U.S. intelligence agencies, like the CIA, would not rely on a circumstantial evidence case when they have the capability to develop hard evidence. The reason they're going with this anonymous source and circumstantial cases, they don't have any hard evidence. It's just a blanket accusation. Now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer was on WMAL Radio Monday. He's a retired Army intelligence officer saying, look, there wouldn't be a reason for Russia to interfere with the election because Donald Trump as president doesn't actually give them any kind of an advantage over Hillary. There is no gain. There's no motive for Russia to interfere on this issue. But they're out there talking about, foreign influence on Donald Trump. Well, let's talk a little bit about foreign influence. I posted a little graphic out here this morning where we're looking at foreign governments who had given over $50,000 to the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. The government of Norway, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Commonwealth of Australia, the government of the Netherlands, Ireland, Kuwait, the Norwegian Agency for Developing Cooperation, Qatar, the government of Brunei, the Sultanate of Oman, Great Britain, United Arab Emirates, Taiwan Economic Cultural Office, Algeria, Canada, Germany. You don't think that they're expecting influence in exchange for that? But, foreign influence is only bad when it's the Russians. It's those bad, evil Russians. Evil Russians. Now, I used to have a lot of respect for Keith Olbermann. But obviously, he has now sold out, and he's out there pushing this thing. We're at war with Russia. We're losing the war with Russia. They're interfering with our country. Trump is a Russian stooge, and if you don't agree with me, you're a traitor to America. And I'm a little surprised. I thought Keith was a little more level-headed than that. Now, Piers Morgan is out there making a very cogent, and I might add, accurate observation. Hillary and the Democrats, the liberalologists, as I'm starting to call them, they are not defending American democracy from foreign meddling. They are, in fact, a threat to American democracy by trying to overturn the Electoral College, overturn the election, and stage what amounts to a soft coup d'etat against the government, against the American people. They're trying to steal the country. Hillary isn't just stealing the White House. She wants to steal all those future tax revenues. She wants to steal the lives of your children who are going to die in those wars of conquest she dreams of. That's how serious this is. And it may be backfiring. We're starting to see articles like this one from Global Research about how the Democrats are destroying themselves with this Russia hacking hysteria. They're hoisting with their own petard. Because they're looking for somebody to blame. It's not our fault. We're the victims. We're the snowflakes. We're the buttercups. We never do anything wrong. We meant well. We're working for a better world, and everything we do is justified. And they're looking, Hillary lost because of Russia, and she lost because of the fake media. No, Hillary Clinton lost this election because she is a polarizing, untrustworthy warmonger with a 30-year record of crimes and corruptions. And she's managed to get away with it all, and that does not qualify you to be a president. Tommy Lahren is out there saying sooner or later the Democrats are going to run out of people, nations, elections, recounts, and social media platforms to blame for their loss, and they're going to have to deal with it. I imagine they'll run into their little safe space rooms and lock the door and play with their Play-Doh and cry and all the rest of it. Let's grab a quick phone call here. Pat in Fort Worth, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, I have a lot of theories about things that people are talking about now. One thing you just talked about, the Contras and the drug running.
Yes.
Well, there's a book called 1982, Magog Hansel. Ever heard of it?
No.
Well, Israel discovered an enclave, a Russian enclave at Sidon, Lebanon, and they had built a huge underground city almost with their big, huge earth-moving, tunnel-digging.
Okay, this sounds like it's a work of fiction.
And,
okay.
Well, they did that. They did that semiconductor thing over here in Texas, too.
Okay, well, all right. Well,
they did.
Hang on, Pat. Thank you very much. It's kind of going a little off topic and outside, so we're going to let you go here. What we know about Iran-Contra has been documented by the people who took part in it. And again, getting back to that issue of fake media, you need to remember that two very experienced Washington Post reporters, Sally Denton and Roger Morris, wrote an article about how the Reagan and Bush and Clinton White Houses were tangled up in this whole ongoing drug scandal in Arkansas. It was called The Crimes of Mena. We actually have a copy of it at my website. I'm going to repost it on this next commercial break here. And they had written this story based on documents recovered from assassinated drug pilot Barry Seal. And they took the story to their boss at the Washington Post. The lawyers at the Washington Post fact-checked it, looked at all the evidence and documentation they had, and they cleared it for publication. The Washington Post lawyers said, this is a true, accurate story, and we should go with it. And Washington Post managing editor Bob Kaiser, who was a fellow Skull and Bone alumni with George Bush, spiked the story. Wouldn't even meet with Sally Denton and Roger Morris. He hid in his office and he told his secretary, go tell him we can't run with this story. So when you want to find out who the real news and who the fake news is, the Washington Post helped cover up this massive drug smuggling operation that involved the highest elements of the U.S. government. There's the fake news for you. Now then, getting on back to the present situation here. Out in Colorado, a federal judge has now blocked a motion by the Colorado electors to change the state rules so that they would not be forced to vote for Donald Trump. And the judge said, no, you're supposed to represent the people of this state. And if you're not going to do that, the honorable thing is to resign. So we're finding out now that this whole faithless elector situation is organized. And apparently there is this public relations firm, Megaphone Strategies, which is working with the White House and Hillary Clinton to work on behalf of these faithless electors to get them interviews on TV and radio and get on this stuff out there saying, oh, we've got a duty to the country to prevent Donald Trump from we have to get Hillary Clinton in there or she's going to send us all to jail with all the blackmail information she's got. So who are these faithless electors? What kind of people, except in office, pledging to represent the results of the election, pledging to represent the people of their state, and then they just change their mind? Well, let's take a look at one. Stephen Christopher Supran. This is that faithless elector down in Texas. He's got a lot of media coverage. He's all over. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about how he couldn't possibly vote for Donald Trump. And they would say, see, this is a man of honor and principle. And it turns out he's anything but. People have been digging into this guy. And according to this article that came out of GotNews.com, this Stephen Christopher Supran was a member of the cheating website Ashley Madison before they realized it was all a hoax. Apparently is in bankruptcy, married with 3 young kids while he was doing the Ashley Madison, hideously in debt, and apparently has been linked to a payday loan scam site. So who appoints a scumbag like this to be a state elector is what I want to know. And mostly because somebody who's that deeply in debt and facing that kind of legal trouble is wide open for manipulation and blackmail from outside. Now, a story coming out of Veterans News Now, a threat to the Electoral College. And they're talking about how the liberalologists are now out there saying, we've just got to throw the Electoral College out and go on the popular vote. Well, that would violate the ex post facto provision of the Constitution, first of all. Second of all, you don't get to change the rules of the game after the game is all over. I mean, you're sitting there in Las Vegas, you're penniless, and you're now saying, maybe it should be 22 instead of 21 on blackjack. They're going to laugh at you. And nobody can document that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote because of all the fraud that has been discovered so far in these recounts. Now, we're going to take a break for some commercials. We've got a caller waiting on the line. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go to the phones. Bob in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I actually tried that at one of the casinos at the blackjack table, the 22 argument, but they didn't go for it, though.
Yeah, I didn't think they would.
Mike, first, you notice with these Republicans, like, obviously Hillary supporters are all fanatics. This would never happen to an electoral college voter on the Democratic side. This only happens to the Republicans. They're the ones who never do a thorough enough job of vetting their people. It never happens to the Democrats.
Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the history of the Electoral College. I mean, there have been faithless electors before, usually protest votes. None of them have ever succeeded in reversing the will of the people. But again, trying to get 38 electors to jump ship on Trump, that is really a long shot. And even if it were to happen, nobody would think the Electoral College acted in good faith, and that would give Congress the legal right to overrule them.
Yeah, but a lot of these guys in Congress, even, the Republicans and, nominally Republicans, I'm worried. They're against Trump. They wouldn't mind seeing Hillary Clinton as president. I really believe that.
I don't know.
Guys like Graham and John McCain, they don't want to see Trump as president.
No, because they're pro-war, and the war party, crosses both aisles. And you've got Trump saying he wants to normalize relations with China and Russia. Plus, again, Hillary has got all of official Washington, by the short and curlies with all this blackmail information that they've been using to avoid legal prosecution for their crimes all these years. And that's why they're all working for. It's not like they like Hillary or like her policies or anything. They're scared that they're going to lose their very cushy jobs and their big fat paychecks, and that they're actually going to go to jail for a lot of what they've done.
Yeah, Mike, two things. One thing, first, like I said, I support I think your idea of reforming the electoral system is great, but you never seem to mention, or at least I haven't heard you mention, campaign finance reform, because unless you reform that, then you're still going to have these big money interests in control, ultimate control of the system. So, I mean, yes, we need to reform the electoral system, but we also have to get this big money out of the system.
I absolutely agree.
It's so corrupting.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the original way this country was set up, there were strict limits on political donations from anybody, so that a candidate's campaign war chest was a true reflection of their popular support. Of course, the big money interests who want to corrupt and sway that system have lobbied over the years for we should be allowed to contribute more because we're richer and so forth. And then that ridiculous decision that corporations, buildings, are legal persons for the purpose of the First Amendment and investing in political campaigns. The corporation isn't spending that money. It's the CEO. And it's a way for CEOs to have a greater influence on the political system than ordinary citizens, and that is not what America is supposed to be. And you're absolutely right. We need to go back to a system where there are strict limits on campaign donations, so that those who are running and are elected represent the will of the people and not just the puppets of the corporations.
And then, Mike, also you said, back in your day, your generation, you were propagandized and regarding communism. They were scaring the kids about communism and the Russians, and you said that's not going on. Today's kids didn't grow up with that, but I kind of disagree. I mean, yes, maybe they're not trying to scare the kids with that message about the commies, because they're not commies anymore, but they still indoctrinate these kids regarding the state and how they should all revere the state. And right now, the state is demonizing Russia. So
well, yeah, I'm sure that
Russia, I think these kids are going to still believe it.
I'm sure that today, right now, over the last couple of months, we've probably seen our public school system start to demonize Russia. But I'm talking about kids who have been, 18 years going through the public school system without all of that, because they were instead being propagandized about things like human-caused global warming and all the rest of that other nonsense. But the fact that they're not getting a lot of traction on this, I think, is very, very telling.
I'm still worried, though. I won't be relieved, until Tuesday.
Well, for me, it's January 20th, because there's still some shenanigans that can happen on the 6th of January. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Bob in Indiana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
This is Bob in Indiana, and I was listening to you the other day, and somebody called in about Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
I listened or read Leah Ranini's one on Troublemaker, and it's a fantastic book exposing quite many things on Scientology, and of course Christianity is right on the heels. My question is, did you say that she wrote another book?
No, she has a TV series out now about Scientology. And it's really very good. It's mostly talking about what happens to members of the church after they leave. They get threatened. Anybody who wants to talk about what's inside the church, they get followed and harassed. It's real Gestapo, liberalologist, brown shirt kind of behavior.
Yeah, I know. Well, we don't watch TV. How can I watch it?
Well, I mean, I think they're streaming the older episodes on the website of, I think it's A&E. I actually don't recall off the top of my head which channel is covering it, but just do a search for Lee Remini Scientology, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. And the other one, of course, would be HBO's Going Clear, which I'm sure is available on their website as well. And they're really very insightful. And like I said, I used to run into these people all the time when I was working in Hollywood. They're very, very, very scary because they're convinced they're working for a better world, and therefore anything they do is perfectly justified in that belief that it's somehow helping planet Earth. Okay?
Okay, Mike. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch over to the Black Trump supporter somewhere in the Northeast. What's on your mind? Hello, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Michael.
Okay.
Mike, I just wanted to tell, I was just calling to tell you, okay, with thank God the judge blocked it in Pennsylvania. But there was an article that came out when I was watching all that stuff going on last week. 3 days ago, it said that there was no chance. The electors in Pennsylvania were showing no signs of flipping, voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yes. So
that kind of, put that's at least, and they're unbound too, so they could vote for him, and there's no penalty. And then an article was saying how the state police had reached out to them and offered their support for them, and if they needed anything, they were right there watching. So.
Well, it's not just the local police. I mean, Oath Keepers are out there. And what's really kind of amazing, the Department of Justice is refusing to investigate these death threats against the electors. And they won't even say what the basis of that decision is. They're simply saying no comment. We're not investigating the death threats against the electors, and we're not going to tell you why.
That's crazy.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we're going to switch over to James in Tokyo. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. It's James in Tokyo, the person that you've criticized for about a year comparing Hillary to Godzilla. Godzilla has never killed as many people as Hillary, for Christ's sake.
Well, look, hang on. Let's give credit where credit is due. Godzilla did not take money from foreign governments to destroy Japan.
Thank you for that. Thank you for elevating our mascot. First, before I talk about the elector stuff, you mentioned Westworld.
Yes.
On your show, and I watched it. It was pretty good.
It is. It's great. The writing is fab. I'm still going through. I'm rerunning the earlier episodes. I mean, the writing is so good. I mean, I'm always picking up all this new stuff here. And what's really amazing, I just got done donating a bunch of political buttons to the Smithsonian, and in the middle, I found I still had the promo button from the original 1973 theatrical release of Michael Crichton's original Westworld. So I dropped it in an envelope and I mailed it off to J.J. Abrams, and I hope he actually gets it because I'm sure he'll get a big kick out of it.
You know what I hate when you say? I hate when you say on your show, shows like this always make me glad that I'm paying for cable. And I don't think you should pay for cable because I use Kodi, and a friend of yours, Rai Dawson, also in Japan, he uses Kodi, and he can watch every show and movie for free, and it's legal.
Well, hang on here a little bit, okay? If if the production company can't make money producing the show, there won't be a show to watch. And so my only objection to paying for cable is when cable first came on out, the idea was that if you were paying for it, you didn't have to deal with the commercials. And today, you're paying for cable and you're getting more commercials than you even did with over-the-air broadcast, and that's my gripe. With our local cable, I'm upset with how many reruns there are and how little original programming there is. But there is some good original programming out there. Obviously, Westworld, we've had the season finale. Now we got to wait for season 2. There's another one I feel I ought to mention as well. The Sci-Fi Channel finally woke up and they stopped all these Roger Corman, Dino Croc versus Super Octopus, whatever things they were going to do. And they've got a new series called Incorporated, which is a projection into the future when corporations really do run the world, and that is also worth catching.
Well, even if you have a desire to pay for cable, you should still get Cody.
I'm not going to, no.
So I'm not hurting anyone.
Yeah, you are. You are. I mean, because, these people are in business to make money for their creative effort, and obviously, having been in that business myself, I'm going to be on their side. If the money doesn't come in from putting out your music, your video, your film, then there won't be music, video, and film next year, and that's just the reality of the situation. Right now, I understand that Amazon's Grand Tour, which was the repackaging of Jeremy Clarkson and James May and Richard Hammond from the old Top Gear into a new show, and by the way, Claire and I are enjoying that one as well. That is now the most pirated show on the Internet. And again, if everybody is stealing it for free, then there won't be a Grand Tour next year. So, I mean, come on, let's do the honorable thing here. If we're enjoying these shows, let's give them our money so that there'll be more of the shows in the future. It's just common sense. Okay? Anyway, listen.
Well, I'm not a big spender like you, but
I'm not a big spender either, but this is just...
I appreciate your heart, that your heart is as clean as that harp-playing angel.
No, actually, her heart's a lot cleaner than mine. Her heart is a lot cleaner than mine.
About the electors.
Yes.
About the electors, do you really think it's going to stand? Because I think if that kind of stuff goes through and she gets the extra, whatever it is, 22 votes.
38.
I think the government will shut down. There will be so many enraged people. I just don't think.
I'm hearing that from so many places, so many angry people, and they're talking about civil war. You've got media in other countries talking about how the U.S. could have a civil war over this nonsense. And even if it quiets down and goes away, and Donald Trump is the president, what Hillary and the liberalologists have done to America's public image abroad, we will be decades recovering from that damage to our image. We're not seen as a great nation anymore. We're not seen as a moral leader anymore. We're basically seen as just another tin pot dictatorship, although in Hillary's case it's a gold pot. And our nation has suffered a tremendous amount of damage from all of this nonsense.
Hey, can I ask you one quick question?
Real quick.
Okay. You mentioned before that you had the iPhone, 5, and you were upset with Windows, and Claire uses the producer sonar. I use the producer sonar too. But anyway, if I made a really great song for What Really Happened, would you use it? If it was better than what you had?
I find that impossible to believe that you could write a better song than Claire does. Claire's laughing in the other room.
I know, but I'll send it to you. I love
right.
Claire, and I love all of her music.
Go ahead and send it along, and we'll take a listen at it as well. Thanks an awful lot, and we're going to switch over to another James, this one in Charlotte, North Carolina. Aloha, James. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hi, Mike. I was just curious, did you ever get the record snowfall on the peaks on the Big Island?
Yeah, we got like almost 30 inches down there on the tops of the volcanoes. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm going to go down to the Big Island and open a ski shop.
Yeah, well, it's we're getting our hard freeze here in North Carolina about a month early this year. So
yeah.
I'll let you know about.
We're still 10 days away from the official start of winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you a couple of things regarding the electoral vote. You had mentioned about Colorado, they were trying to change the rules on the voting, it seems odd that because Hillary won Colorado officially, probably not actually, but officially she did. I was just wondering why they were trying to change the voting rules there.
I would have to go back and look because some states it's winner take all on the electors, and others it's apportioned. So if Hillary had 60,
Colorado's winner take all.
Colorado's winner take all. Well, then I don't understand why this was a big deal, because the electors who wanted the state law changed said they did not want to vote for Trump. They wanted to vote for Hillary. So we'll have to take a closer look at that issue. But it really comes down to this. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton ran this election campaign. They both went into it agreeing to the rules that are in the Constitution on how our presidential elections are being run. And now that it's all over and Hillary didn't get the result she wanted, she wants the rules changed retroactively. That's not real world. That's not real world. So she's trying to do a soft coup d'etat.
Yeah. Let me just throw a quick idea out, and I don't know, you may want to criticize it or whatever, but I've always thought it would be more fair in terms of the electoral vote to go by congressional districts. Whoever wins the popular vote within a congressional district gets that district as an electoral vote, and whoever wins a majority of the nation's 435 congressional districts would be declared the winner. And that way you would never have a split between the popular vote and the electoral vote, because the population's balanced within each congressional district.
Well, that's not necessarily a given, and that's for the same reason when this whole thing first came on up. If you have a congressional district where there's 100 people living there and all of them vote for candidate A, and then you have two other districts with 100 people each, and 51 of those people vote for candidate B, you're going to have a situation where candidate B wins the electoral votes from those three districts, even though candidate A actually has the greatest number of popular votes. It's a complex issue trying to balance the two, but the issue was going back to the fact that the name of this country is the United States, plural, of America. And the states are supposed to be equal in power and authority and in partnership with that central federal government. And so the Electoral College, among its many other reasons for being, is to make sure that the states are equally represented in the choosing of the government. Otherwise, it'd just be the four most populous states picking every single election, and people in places like Nebraska and South Dakota would have absolutely no influence whatsoever on the elections. So that's why that's there. And is it perfect? No. But it is the rules that everybody agreed to play by, and Hillary is just being a sore loser by looking back and saying, well, let's just throw the rules out and give me the White House because I can claim I had the popular vote. But again, we can't document that she actually won the popular vote because of all the illegal immigrants, all the dead voters, all the machine problems, and especially, I'm sure they're glad Michigan finally shut down their recount because it was exposing massive, massive election fraud, all favoring Hillary Clinton.
They'll probably never find them all. I'm sure she did not.
The system is designed to hide it. That's the problem with our current election system. It's designed to facilitate and conceal massive election fraud, and that is why it has to go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Alex in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I was just thinking on the Electoral College, one of the benefits that isn't spoken of very often is the fact that if 2 or 3 states could determine an election, it would be very easy for a hostile government or an actor to come in and say, hey, we're just going to campaign in California and New York and win the election and overthrow that country that way. I think,
or not even foreign government, illegal immigrants who are allowed to vote, and that came very close to happening because if you look where Hillary Clinton was getting her greatest victories in terms of election, it's California, which is filled with illegal immigrants, and all those sanctuary cities. I mean, Hillary votes spiked in all those sanctuary cities, and those cities are filled with people who aren't supposed to be able to vote.
That's right. So we do need a paper trail from every precinct in the United States, a better method of being able to actually tally the votes for their authenticity. But the Electoral College is a pretty good system, believe it or not. I mean, it prevents, like I said, the hostile actors from coming in and saying, hey, we're going to overthrow.
Yeah, it was a last ditch. It was a safety mechanism. It's trying to balance the popular vote with the interests of the states, and also as a last ditch mechanism, so that a populist demagogue who really would be a bad president is blocked from the White House. And again, there's another fail-safe mechanism behind that, where if Congress determines the Electoral College has not acted in good faith, they can overturn that. And it is a complex system. Now, we've got an article, I've been putting it up, about how to have a more honest, transparent election system. And it gets rid of tabulation centers, gets rid of the electronic voting machines, and it's everybody just sort of crowdsource counting the vote and tracking the numbers all the way up from the precincts to the national election, so everybody with a calculator can verify the numbers for themselves. And that's going to prevent a huge amount of the fraud that we have been seeing.
That's right. And I think that we do need Obama to show us every bit of evidence that he has saying that Russia hacked our election, because I think that's a crime that our president would come out and say that. That type of a false flag. That needs to be punished. That we need to prove that that's a false flag, and I think that we can.
Actually, the burden of proof is on Obama. After, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. The assumption is everything Obama says is a lie. The burden of proof is on him. We got to let you go, and thanks an awful lot. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with a couple more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones. John in Barbados, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Concerning the last caller's comments, all this nonsense about the Russian hacking or what have you, doesn't matter whether it was hacked or it was leaked. Who gives a damn? I mean, if you look at the information, surely the American people are entitled to know the crimes, the fraud, the lies and corruption of Hillary Clinton and her DNC.
Well, it's kind of funny. Back during the summer, Huffington Post was saying exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter where the information came from. You need to be looking at it. Of course, today, Huffington Post has gone the other way, saying, pay no attention to what's actually in there. It's that Russia's attacking us, and Obama's saying exactly the same thing. The last thing they want is for the American people to actually be reading the Podesta emails and the DNC leaks and see just how fraudulent this whole election has been. This isn't just about Hillary Clinton trying to cheat Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton and the entire Democratic Party establishment cheated Bernie Sanders. And, when I was a kid, we were always told cheaters never prosper, or they shouldn't prosper. And we know sometimes they get away with it, but if we know they're cheating, we have a moral obligation to stand up and do everything we can to say those who cheat the system should go down in absolute ruin.
Well, I mean, even if Russia did hack the system, they're as clever as the NSA and others. They're as smart. They would hide it.
They wouldn't leave a trace.
They would find it.
Napolitano was saying exactly that same thing. If it had really been Russia, there wouldn't have been a trace. And by the way, something to remember, when the DNC emails first surfaced, the DNC said there was no evidence of hacking on their systems whatsoever. And we've got all these other people who've come on out and said this was an internal leak. Assange has said it was an internal leak. Craig Murray is saying it's an internal leak. Some people seem to think it was probably Seth Rich, who was murdered in Washington, D.C. He was a DNC insider. The police are saying it was just a robbery, but he still had his wallet, his watch, and his cell phone. Kind of a dumb robber to kill somebody and leave all the goodies behind, don't you think?
Well, I think there was probably a Bernie Sanders supporter in the NSA. They leaked all the stuff out to WikiLeaks, who then published it. So I'm rather thinking it was a frustrated Bernie Sanders supporter who actually leak the information. It wasn't hacked at all.
Well, that it was a leak is pretty much obvious at this point. I don't think it was a Bernie Sanders supporter because Bernie Sanders people didn't have access to those internal DNC Hillary emails. You have to look at who actually had the access to the material that was leaked out. Sanders supporters wouldn't have had that. Seth Rich did.
Yes, but what I mean is an NSA employee who was a Bernie Sanders supporter. He had access. They supposedly have access to everybody's emails and servers.
Well, again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a Bernie Sanders supporter. It may be somebody in the NSA who understands that Hillary's path toward the White House could trigger a civil war, and nobody wants that to happen. We got to take a break for station identification. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before I take some more phone calls, I want to make a point here for everybody to consider, okay? If, in fact, Russia somehow hacked the U.S. election, doesn't it prove that Bev Harris was right and these electronic voting machines have to go? If, in fact, Russia hacked the U.S. election, doesn't it prove the entire NSA has been a terrible waste of money and incapable of protecting our IT infrastructure? You can't have it both ways. You can't have the NSA with the authority to spy on all of us in defiance of the Fourth Amendment, saying that they have to do it to protect our security, and then turn around and say, whoops, well, Russia hacked our elections. This is what I mean about the propaganda biting itself on the rear end. And this is what happens when your propaganda is being designed by advertising agencies and public relations firms who institutionally are thinking in time spans of 30 or 60 seconds or maybe a sales campaign for a few weeks, and then the slate is erased and they just start off on a whole new idea. But there's the issue right there. If Hillary's fantasy of a Russian hack of the elections were to be true, it vindicates everything Bev Harris has been saying for all these years, and it proves the NSA, CIA, FBI, all of them are completely impotent in the face of Russia. If Russia is able to influence our elections, then all of these agencies can't do a thing about it. We might as well surrender now, huh, people? Now, one more thing before we get back to the phone calls. I'd like to remind everybody of Title 18, U.S. Code Section 871. Threats against the President and successors to the presidency are a crime punishable by 5 years in prison. All these people running around saying that, we're going to crowdsource, crowdfund to buy the assassination of Donald Trump and everything, they're committing felonies. They should be in jail. All of these Hillary rioters who are out there screaming Trump needs to be killed, they all ought to be in jail. And there are so many of them, that might actually justify those FEMA concentration camps. But we have a Department of Justice that is turning a blind eye to all of this, just like they're turning a blind eye to the death threats against the electors. They will not investigate the death threats against the electors. They won't even explain the rationale behind that decision. It's just no comment, no comment. It's none of your business. Just go back to your pens, slaves. We know what's best for you. Boy, talk about the big lie. That's the biggest one right there. Let's go back to the phones here. Bruce in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Michael. How's my sound quality? Is it okay?
It's kind of warbly, but let's. If you talk slow, I think we'll hear you.
Yeah, I bought one of those neat electronic devices that you don't get what you pay for. You know it.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Okay. Hey, just a couple of points of area. I think this whole Russia hacking issue begins and ends with Syria. Russia's in the way of Israel and the United States breaking up Syria, and if Trump gets in, that's pretty much an impossible situation. And so they're going to just hammer and hammer because basically our foreign policy is Israel's foreign policy. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, the animosity against Russia did not begin with Syria. The animosity against Russia began on the day Putin took direct government control of their central bank in order to run Russia's public currency as a public utility. And that was the day Russia went from trusted friend and partner to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list. Now, with regard to Syria, Russia is in Syria at the express invitation of the Syrian government to deal with the terrorist threat. And they have every right to be there. When Trump takes the White House, what's going to happen in Syria is Trump's going to pull the plug. He's going to say, this is it. We don't have any business being in there, and that's going to be the end of this program to conquer all the resource-rich areas of the world and shackle them to the U.S. dollar. The sad reality we're all going to have to live with right now is we're heading into an economic disaster. They're going to blame Donald Trump for it, just like they blamed Herbert Hoover for the Depression of the 1930s. But the root causes of this economic...
They're already looking at increased interest rates. They've already announced that.
Yeah, I know that... Okay, hang on. If I may. Okay. The root causes of the coming economic crash stretch back 30 years with the abandonment or the de-emphasis of U.S. manufacturing, compounded by this disastrous experiment with GMOs to the point where nobody wants to buy our agricultural exports. This built-in self-destruct device called private central banking that by design creates more debt than money with which to pay the debt until the debt overwhelms the system and brings it down, which is what's happening in Europe right now. It's going to happen here. I'd love to be able to sit here and tell you that Donald Trump winning the White House is going to save us from an economic disaster. No, it isn't. Trump winning the White House means we may deal with that economic disaster in a somewhat more even-handed manner, as opposed to Hillary's continuance of the status quo, which is anytime a bank gets in trouble, we loot the American people and give their money to the banks to tick them on just a little bit longer here. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, Bruce?
Yeah, we talked last, I brought up the Boys and Company C at the old Vietnam movie. Did you ever get a chance to see it?
No, I didn't. You have no idea how busy I am between the website and the radio show. I'm also Claire's roadie, and this is Christmas time, so it's the busy season, and her choir is singing all over the city and the rest of it. So I'm a little bit swamped right now, but it is on my list of things to do once life calms down after January 20th, okay?
Okay. Arlie Emery, you know him from Full Metal Jacket?
Yes.
The drill instructor? He comes out in that movie. Actually, he plays a very different drill instructor. I think it'll be pretty interesting to watch. Anyway, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome there. Yeah, he had a really good career based on that character. I mean, that was really kind of good. All right, we're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to close the lines for a while. Deanna in Colorado, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, love your show. So I am just calling in about the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I am extremely ashamed of my state turning blue. If you do look at the map about how that happened, it's definitely, the big cities, Denver, Colorado, Boulder,
mm-hmm.
Fort Collins, I think, that, put the state in the blue. But anyways, the way that I understand this convoluted electoral college nonsense that's going on in this state, from an interview that I saw of one of them, because it's really ridiculous because, we're supposed to be a state for Hillary. The electors are okay voting for a Republican. They're happy to switch their votes to Republican as long as they can vote for a Republican other than Donald Trump. So they think that they're going to go into the Electoral College and get a bunch of electors to switch their vote miraculously to somebody that's, not even running for president in the main election. And
well, actually, no,
it's not voting for Hillary.
It doesn't work that way. It would have to be one of the top three finishers in the election that the Electoral College votes for. Now, I was looking at the situation in Colorado over the last break here. Colorado has 9 electors. It did go for Hillary. It may have been stolen in Colorado. Because they're finding this massive election fraud up in Michigan. I don't think Michigan was the only state out of 50 where this kind of stuff was going on. But I think the reason they went into Colorado, even though it was already for Hillary, is they were looking for a state where they could get a legal precedent of overturning the state law requiring electors to vote with the state results. And that if they could get that in an easy state like Colorado, then Hillary's lawyers could go to all these other states and say, well, Colorado just ruled that these laws really shouldn't be binding, and try and get those laws overturned. So it's a good thing the federal judge blocked it, because that's cutting off that. I think that was the strategy behind that move in Colorado, to establish a single legal precedent that could be taken to other states, to Trump states, and get their electors unbound.
Yeah, that might be the case. But when you listen to the electoral person trying to explain why she's willing to switch her vote, it is utter nonsense. And of course, I have a brain, so I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. And I literally am sitting here going, no, but my electorals, like, I want my electorals to vote for Hillary because that's the law, and that's what they're supposed to do. So it's pretty nonsensical.
It is nonsensical, but the only thing that does make sense is they were trying to get a legal precedent in the courts to unbind the electors. Earlier in the year, Hillary and the DNC lawyers were all across the country overturning voter ID laws because they needed those illegal immigrant voters. And I think this stunt in Colorado was more of the same, trying to get just one state to say, all right, we understand this law requiring the electors to vote with the popular vote is invalid. Then they could go to the other states and say, we have a legal precedent from Colorado, unbind the electors. And if you're going to have unbound electors, why have a popular vote at all? We'll just get electors like that guy from Texas who's married, 3 kids, signed up for Ashley Madison. He's bankrupt, hopelessly in debt, linked to a payday loan scam site. Yeah, perfect representative of the people to pick the next president of the United States of America.
All right. All right, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to close the phone lines for a little bit because I'm way, way behind on the talking points. Now, I've often commented that there are parallels between what is going on today in this war between the real news, fake news, and what happened back when Gutenberg rediscovered movable type printing. Books became affordable to the middle class, literacy exploded, and the power structure of the day was threatened, as our current power structure is. They went into a panic, and they tried to find some way to stop the march of progress. And those institutions and entities that were able to evolve and adapt to the new environment of a better educated, better informed population survived. And those entities that couldn't evolve went extinct. And we're starting to see the same thing here because some of the corporate media is now starting to show signs of evolution and moving forward and saying, this is the new reality and we've got to start dealing with it right now. Forbes has an article out there saying that the real fake news is that corporate media. And they're talking about this seismic event that this election was, that just sent these shockwaves through a political and media establishment that was still living with the delusion that they were totally in control of the minds of America, that we were all under their brain control and so forth. And then it goes on to talk about, since the election, you're seeing how different entities are reacting. And most of the corporate media is doubling down. Oh, it's Russia, it's this, it's that. They're the fake news, we're the true news. And Forbes is making the observation that in this failure to adapt to the new reality of a distributed citizens media, the corporate media is just digging its own grave. Their ratings are still going down. And the more hysterical they get with the smear jobs and the more it's exposed that they're just lying about everything, it really is signaling the end of that era. And we need to take this nation back to the original model of the media, which is it was distributed. There were limits on how much media any one entity could own to preserve a diversity of opinion so that the American people could go to multiple sources, get multiple points of view, and then decide for themselves what was best for the nation. And we're going back there. We're going back there. And they're not going to be able to stop it any more than they stopped Gutenberg. And they tried. They really tried. I mean, the first person to do an English translation of the Bible was burned at the stake along with the Bibles, because each individual church had altered their Bible to suit whatever their particular beliefs or agenda was, and people all of a sudden were saying, wait a minute, this church doesn't agree with this church, this Bible doesn't agree with this, how can this be the perfect revealed Word of God if they're all over the place here? And ultimately it led to the creation of the King James Bible to bring all these disparate views of religion back together and prevent a crisis of faith within that church. Now then, over at CNN, Brian Stelter is out there screaming that the Donald Trump election victory is a national emergency. It's a tragedy. It's this. It's that. I mean, they're frothing at the mouth almost. I think we're going to have to take some of these people at CNN and get them tested for hoof and mouth. Now, as I mentioned before, up in Michigan, they have now stopped that recount. Trump is still the winner, and I think it was stopped mostly because of all the fraud that has come on out. Because not just in the recount, because of everything that they found, Michigan is now going back and taking a closer look at the general election itself. And they're already finding that in 37% of Detroit's precincts, the electronic voting machines registered far more votes than actual voters who showed up at those precincts. So now they're calling for a complete audit, not of the recount, but of the actual election itself. And if you think Michigan was the only state where massive pro-Hillary election fraud was taking place, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. This may well turn out to have been the crookedest election in the nation's history. Now, the Washington Post is still out there trying to be the forefront of the assault on the independent media. They're Russian stooges, they're scum, they're white supremacists, they're Nazis, and all the rest of that. But along with the long track record of provably false stories the Washington Post has put out over the years, like Saddam's nuclear weapons, the known and documented close association between the Washington Post and the CIA it works against them. The American public doesn't see the Washington Post as that wonderful newspaper that blew the Watergate story wide open. Today, the Washington Post is seen as America's equivalent of the Soviet-era Pravda and Izvestia. It's a mouthpiece for the government, and that's all that's coming on out of there. Now, do you remember that Politico reporter who was vetting all of his stories for Politico with the Hillary Clinton campaign prior to publication, and he got fired, and everybody said, oh, how terrible, how terrible. Not to worry, he's got a new job. The New York Times just hired this guy. So, Forbes is right. Much of the corporate media have not learned the lesson of 2016. They're still living in a fantasy world where they're going to go back to where they speak, you believe, and all will be well. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Story coming out of Blacklisted News. Alternative media, independent media. Folks, again, corporate media, independent media. The corporate media is not mainstream anymore. The lion's share of the audience is now over here on the internet. And I don't like the name alternative media because there's a negative connotation to that word. So we, you, are the independent media, and the rest, with all the money, and the talking heads, the prostitutes and the correspondents, they're the corporate media. So this article is out there, the independent media should prepare to become targets of covert cyber warfare. And they're making that comment based on December 8th, the Senate passed the NDAA and included a provision, the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act, which authorizes the government to attack independent media websites. Well, this is nothing new. They may have just said it's now legal for us to do, but the independent media has been under cyber attack all along. My server's constantly being attacked by the spoiled brats and the tantrums. There's nothing new. Basically, they're just saying, yeah, we're messing with you, and now we've decided it's legal for us to do that. You know, it's a crime for you to hack the government computers. We'll put you in jail. But it's okay for us to hack your computers because we're the good guys, and you're all Russian stooges. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Let's turn to the war zones here. Developments in Syria. Apparently, the battle for Aleppo is pretty much over. They have reached a deal with the remaining jihadis to simply leave, walk out of Aleppo. Now, it's kind of interesting to see in the Western media, such as the Washington Post, about how the city is on the verge of collapse. It actually should be the city is on the verge of liberation, because what's happening is the city of Aleppo, Syria, is now back under the control of the government of Syria. But for the Washington Post, oh, the city is collapsing, it's lost to our terrorist proxies and so forth and so on. Now, unfortunately, the situation in Syria is still not quite over because ISIS has retaken the city of Palmyra. And the Russian Ministry of Defense is saying the blame for this lies with the United States, which asked for a humanitarian break during which ISIS regrouped and rearmed just days after Obama waived limitations on arms to them under the Arms Control Export Act, handing them out like Christmas presents or Kwanzaa presents or whatever it is. And basically saying from now on, these U.S.-backed terrorist groups will not be allowed to regroup and rearm. Down in Israel, Palestinians in their prisons have filed more than 1,000 complaints of torture against their Israeli jailers since 2001. The government of Israel has simply dismissed every single one of them. Now, as you know, we're seeing this blame Russia, blame Russia, blame Russia. It's Cold War fever. I don't think it's getting a lot of traction. Where Hillary's out there saying, Russia stole the election from me. Russia made me murder Vincent Foster. Russia made me do cattle futures trades and all the rest of that. And Gorbachev is out there with a warning saying this could provoke a serious backlash as the Russia-bashing hysteria grows. And it's not conducive to world peace. The Russian people are getting very, very angry at being scapegoated for every failure anywhere in the world. It's not just the United States. Other countries are now blaming Russia. Up in Germany, they're blaming Russia for Merkel's immigration problems, saying Putin is ordering the Muslim refugees to commit acts of violence because he's against Angela Merkel. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Now, yesterday, Donald Trump made a comment about the F-35. And it's a piece of junk. It's a hideously expensive piece of junk. And as a result, Lockheed Martin's stock lost $3 billion. And everybody's out there saying, how can you do that? How can you cut into our profits? Well, it's not Donald Trump's fault, is it? It's Lockheed Martin for putting together a very expensive piece of junk that won't do what it's supposed to do. The F-35 looks cool, but that's about it. The original carrier version couldn't land on a carrier. They had to redesign the tailhook. Can't fly in the fog, can't fly in the rain, can't fly near lightning. The helmet fire control system, $400,000 for a single helmet for a single pilot, still doesn't work. The outside sensors that are supposed to let them see all around the aircraft still don't fuse the images. The networked radar system can't tell the difference between a single target and multiple targets when it presents to the pilots. It's slow, it's underpowered, it's way too heavy because of all the junk they've added to it. It was defeated by 1970s vintage fighters in a test dogfight. Now Congress wants it to do a dogfight against an A-10 attack aircraft, which isn't even an air superiority fighter. And that's the problem. It's not Trump, it's the military-industrial complex. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before the break, we were talking about how Donald Trump's comment about possibly pulling the plug on the F-35 took $3 billion off of Lockheed Martin's stock. And they're out there screaming, how could you do this to us? And it isn't Donald Trump. It's because the military-industrial complex has gotten very rich, very happy, very complacent, producing junk for which they are paid vast sums of taxpayer money. It's not just the F-35, it's the F-22 asphyxiating its pilots, the Independence-class littoral combat ships, corrosion problems, Freedom-class littoral combat ships, drivetrains problem, the Zumwalt drivetrain problems, the Gerald R. Ford. They're saying that thing may never actually be useful in a real shooting war. And as if to punctuate this whole situation, apparently an Osprey has crashed 6 miles off the coast of Okinawa, and this is the second crash of a Marine aircraft in that same area in less than a week. Oh yeah, we're really ready to go to war against Russia and China, aren't we? All right, let's grab ourselves a quick phone call. Bill in Philadelphia, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Fast comment, two fast questions. The media is totally insane. I was watching CNN last night, and it just makes you want to throw up, the topics that they actually talk about. So yes, they are going to be going by, like they say, the dodo bird. Anyway, my question is, Donald's going to be changing the Obamacare Act. And they're talking about the single-payer system. I can't get my head wrapped around, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What exactly is a single-payer system?
Yeah, single-payer is a system that's been adopted in other countries like France, and it tends to work a lot better, mostly because single-payer system is being managed to provide health care as opposed to our current medical industrial complex, which is all about, sucking as much money out of the population by keeping them chronically ill as they can. If Obamacare is canceled by Donald Trump, it's going to translate into a major tax cut for the middle class because health insurance companies are going to have to go back to competing to sell those health insurance policies, and that means the better service, lower costs, and higher benefits. And that's always been the benefit of competition. But we have seen in this country a desire to get rid of any competition and establish monopolies, or at least to take all of the companies and get them to collude with each other to establish monopolistic control, all of which is illegal under like the Sherman Antitrust Act. And it is amazing how many of these programs that we've seen shoved at us over the last few years do violate U.S. law. But as long as the Department of Justice is out there saying, well, we're not going to investigate and we're not going to prosecute and we're not going to explain to you why we decided that, things are going to get completely out of control. So what single payer does is it allows a better system with lower overhead to focus on the actual system of taking care of people. And because single payer is out there covering the costs of medical treatment, they're going to be working to try and bring some of these costs for medical treatment down. Under the current system, and this is why medical care is so expensive in this country, one of the reasons. For any of these HMOs or hospitals to get involved with a medical insurance company, they have to offer them steep discounts on the cost of services to maximize the health insurance company's profits. And so what that means is the hospitals will run up the price of whatever it is they're providing and then discount it back down to what they normally would be charging. So far, so good. But when somebody comes in without insurance, they get charged those artificially inflated prices. And it is a completely messed up system. And that is because under that press of lust for that ink and paper stuff, the medical system in the United States is not about medicine. It's not about health. It's about grinding more money out of the people. It is taking a disproportionate share of our gross domestic product, and it's not actually making more people available to the workforce because so many people are being kept chronically ill because that's more profitable than actually curing people.
I agree with that. Thank you for that. Colloidal silver. You talk about it all the time. You and your darling take it. What exactly is it, and what's it supposed to do?
Okay, well, colloidal silver or nanosilver is just microscopically fine particles of the metal, silver, suspended in distilled water, and it's a broad-spectrum antibiotic and antiviral. It's more broad-spectrum than stuff that you will get at the pharmacies. And the use of silver against disease actually goes all the way back to the Great Plagues of Europe, where somebody noticed that the royalty that were eating off of gold flatware were getting sick and dying just as much as the poor people. But the nobility, the middle class that were using silver flatware and plates and glasses didn't seem to be getting sick. And it's from there that this sort of reputation for magic of silver has come from. Which gets a little silly when they talk about using it against werewolves, but that's really where it all came from. So microscopic silver in solution, when babies are born, those drops they put in their eyes as soon as they're born, that's nanosilver. They put nanosilver in various medications for serious burns to help fight the infection there. And you can buy it at your local Down to Earth or a GNC store. Or if you're reasonably competent with chemistry ware, you can even make it yourself at home, which is what Claire and I do.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. You're the best.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia. Glenn, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I actually called about something else, but it's silver for werewolves and garlic for vampires.
Yes.
Garlic's also an anti-infective.
Yes, it
and
is.
They used to put silver dollars in water barrels. So, which sort of proves, and your point about the silverware, the flatware, also makes the point that that would be elemental silver in the solution.
Yes.
You know, like colloidal. So the nano is much more expensive to actually get the nanoparticulate stuff, but I personally get by quite nicely with the colloidal, and won't go into it any further than that, but it does work.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, very good. About socialized medicine, the single payer is essentially socialized medicine.
Yes.
And your monopoly is the government, and your pay system is the taxes. So French taxes are pretty oppressive, and our health care system isn't that great. But supposedly the Canadian system's a little bit better than the British, and the British is horrible. So
yeah, but here's the situation. Here's the situation. When the government is running a single-payer system, they have a motivation to keep costs under control. And in our current system, the incentive is to keep costs rising as quickly as possible. And at the same time, in order to maximize profitability, the quality of the care goes down. They're out there pushing pills right now. 1/6 of all Americans are now on some form of psychiatric medication. And I have to wonder if this goes a long way to explaining the very poor quality thinking that seems to be coming out of Washington, D.C. these days.
I would prefer a fair trade capitalist model with the government functioning as a regulator. But anyway.
Well, the government's supposed to be functioning as a regulator now, but they aren't. They're not doing their job, whether it's medical care or the Minerals Management Service at the Deepwater Horizon or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or Department of Energy over at San Onofre. These government agencies aren't doing their job. They just sit there and they collect their fat paychecks and they look at online porn. Look at the Securities Exchange Commission. It's supposed to be keeping an eye on Wall Street. Complete, utter failure. They sat on their butt for 12 years while Bernie Madoff was cheating his investors and even his own employees. And so looking to the government as a regulator at this point with this government is a fool's errand.
That's why we have a systemic degradation of moral fiber.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And on today's What Really Happened main page, I put down a series of something like 20 stories just from the last month about all these people being arrested for embezzlement and theft, and these are all like middle-level government officials, union officials, firefighters, city clerks and everything, and they're just stealing like crazy. And it's a reminder that when you have a criminal government, it will yield a criminal society, and how this lust for these pieces of ink and paper has destroyed the best qualities of what we used to call the American character.
Yeah, that's perennial problem. But, well, I found a great investment, Mike. A surefire investment.
Yes.
Fact, in view of what's been going on in the past couple of weeks. Fax machines and toner cartridges.
Well, I'm going long on tar and feathers, ropes and rails here. I did try and invest in gold coins for a while, but I discovered too late that they lose their value if you eat the chocolate bit out of the middle.
Oh, man. Yeah, pitchforks and torches, too. I tried to order a torch from the UK on eBay, and they sent me a flashlight.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yes. Flaming torches and pitchforks. Yeah. All right, well...
take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over here to Ken in Fort Worth. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
That's a good joke, Mike. I like that one. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal it from you. Hey, go on YouTube and put in DC map on dollar bill, front and the back. You ever seen that?
Well, I have a dollar bill right here, and I don't see anything that looks like a map. You know, I don't think I'd want to find my way through the Beltway traffic with this.
Go YouTube it, and this guy overlays a dollar bill over D.C., Washington, D.C., and it's interesting. And there's a front and a back, so watch at least two of them.
Okay. All right, I'll take a look at that.
I came across that the other day, and I go, yep, they're pretty slick.
Well, there's something that you need to understand about the culture back then. If you go back and you look, and I hate to sound like Robert Langdon out of all those Da Vinci Code books and everything, but in an age where there wasn't a lot of literacy, symbols and iconography were much more important, and especially if you look at heraldry for nobility, all of those little designs on the shields and everything, they all had a specific meaning. It was, in many ways, its own language. And so our founding fathers, you need to remember, they were running a nation where literacy was a minority aspect. Most people in the young United States didn't read or write, and so there was a lot more emphasis on symbols, especially for those who were in these various organized groups like the Freemasons.
Yeah, hey, take a look at it, and I'll go from there.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Rob in Chicago. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. I guess you're a little bit warmer out there in Hawaii than we are. We got 11 degrees right now, but anyway, you were talking about colloidal silver. I absolutely love that, and I've been telling people when they get that annoying chemtrail cough that won't go away, put it in an atomizer.
Yeah, it's good for...
Bottle, a little pump one.
Well, you know something? People are beginning to wake up about this because I've got a neighbor who's been very, very ill for about a month, and I talked to her only just yesterday, and she said her doctor, medical establishment doctor, told her to start... I'm sorry, I'm confusing. That was alkaline water, not nanosilver. But yeah, it's at one point the medical establishment tried to ban nanosilver and colloidal silver. At times they've tried to ban the selling of vitamins and everything unless you got a prescription because they want total dictatorial control. But the problem is one of enforcement. People who want to use nanosilver, it is actually very easy to make as long as you're careful. I mean, you have to have a basic understanding of lab procedures and just how important it is to keep your equipment clean while you're making this stuff. But a lot of preppers are very much up on it. If push comes to shove, you can make nanosilver with just 3 9-volt batteries. One thing I will share with you, though, and this is something that we see on a lot of prepper websites where they talk about using the old silver coins as a source of silver. You do not want to do that because those coins, the Washington quarter, the Roosevelt dime and everything, they're not pure silver, and there are other metals in there that will dissolve into solution that you really don't want in your body. If you have an investment-grade silver coin, that, of course, is going to work okay. The .999 fine silver will be fine. But contrary to the prepper website's use of America's silver coinage is not a good idea. Plus, of course, it's so old, there's all kinds of stuff ground into the surface as well. So you really need to be careful.
Exactly.
You are, after all, putting this on your body and drinking it and so forth and so on. So you have to treat it with respect.
Right, especially if you take it internally.
Yes.
Externally, I know I was at a survival expo, and the nurse there, she was very knowledgeable, and she said, I'm not real up on, taking it internally, but I'll tell you what, every time my child comes to my house from my ex's house, sometimes she'll come and she'll be sick as a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I started on a protocol of first she gets a full shot of colloidal silver, then she gets beet propolis. You can get that from the Now brand on Amazon.
Yes.
It's another one of the most, antibiotical type things if you've studied these.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just follow it up with everything from turmeric and all this other stuff. It's just my oldest daughter's graduating from nursing school tonight. She's getting a box full of books that I bought at a half-price bookstore that's all about natural healing. So it'll be interesting to hear what she thinks of it.
Well, as we see our current establishment start to come apart, it's not just the established politics, it's not just the established media, it's the medical establishment, the science establishment, and all of their money-making scams and frauds like global warming are all coming apart. And people are going to have to learn how to be more self-reliant, how to do their own research, and make decisions for themselves instead of blindly trusting somebody in a white lab coat to tell you that you must buy this particular very expensive medication or bad things will happen to you. Anyway, listen, Kevin, I'm going to have to let you go here. We're going to come up here on a commercial break, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're going to go last phone call, then we're going to close the phone lines again. Kevin in Detroit, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Talking about colloidal silver, I'm an asthmatic. And, as far as I remember, I've had asthma all my life. And I always use Primatene Mist to control it. And it controlled it very well. I had very few issues growing up with it. I played football. I played hockey, into almost every sport. And, always took care of myself. I always was a gym junkie. I would go, to the gym 4 days a week, kept myself in good shape. And when I hit my 40s, I could run as fast, and I rarely needed asthma medicine, period. Just normally if I got sick with the flu or something, I would use it. Well, anyway, I think it was 2011, they took Primatene Mist off the shelf. And, I'm a 40-year-old man who could run as far as I wanted and never get winded. I had a six-pack, it was unbelievable. Well, boom, 2011 hit. Sure enough, I get pneumonia. And, I hadn't been the same since. And all the doctors, all they want to do is give you albuterol.
Yes. And
that stuff is horrible, Mike. It's way weaker than Primatene Mist, and you actually get hooked to it.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm having a darn asthma attack every 4 to 6 hours. I have got to have my breathing treatment of albuterol.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll be honest with you, it really got me down. I was on steroids for 2 years, which, steroids really works good for asthma, but it has so many downsides. You know, anybody that takes steroids voluntarily has got something wrong with it, because that is one wicked drug.
that is nasty stuff. I remember all these stories about athletes who took steroids and they paid for it much later in life, it's dangerous stuff. Of course, anything you put into your body is going to have a side effect, and that's just. Okay.
I finally told them, I'm like, hey, I'm done with steroids. Don't give me steroids anymore. And like my quality of life went so low from being this healthy, active person to being a guy basically fighting for every breath all the damn time. And it got really depressing. And then all of a sudden I start hearing all this stuff, and you were a part of it, and some of your commercials that I heard, the colloidal silver. Well, anyway, I end up running up to my local.
Boy, I hate to do this. I hate to do this to you. I was kind of hoping you were going to get to the point, but we have to let you go and do a station break here. We're going to close the phone lines because I got a bunch more stories I need to get through. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. We've got the phone lines are closed because I'm way behind on the talking points here, and I'm tired of talking about nano silver anyway. We're talking about the economy. Yesterday we mentioned how Italy's banks were being told by the European Central Bank there is no help available. Well, Greece is in serious trouble as well, has been for a while, and the IMF is now saying their current bailout plan is not credible. Apparently there isn't enough money left in the pockets of the people of Greece to make this work out for the money junkies, and so they're being cut loose. Now remember, part of the problem with Greece's economy is back when Papandreou was there and Greece was first joining the European Union. Papandreou, working with Goldman Sachs, used a bunch of currency swaps to conceal the true scale of Greece's debt to get into the EU. Then after they were in the EU and Papandreou stepped down, his successors came on in, looked at the bookkeeping and said, oh boy, we are in trouble, or whatever the equivalent in the Greek language would happen to be. So half that debt was arrived at by fraud. And according to people like Christine Lagarde over at the IMF, it doesn't matter. If the debt was created by fraud by your government, you still have to pay it. It's sacrosanct. And by the way, Lagarde is now on trial herself over in France for negligence from when she was holding a position over there as well. So Italy's banks are being left to twist slowly in the wind. Same thing in Greece. Over in Italy, Unicredit has just slashed 14,000 jobs, and they are out there literally begging investors for any kind of cash to keep things going a little bit longer. And anybody looking at this Ponzi scheme private central banking system has to understand we are at the point where no amount of money poured on in is going to save the system, let alone generate a profit. And they're looking at a massive collapse of Italy's banks that could be the last days of the Eurozone. Now, Nobel Prize-winning Harvard economist Oliver Hart, in an interview with Euractiv Spain, was saying the euro was a mistake because the single currency was imposed before the European Union member states were sufficiently homogeneous to be considered a single entity. In other words, form the EU, blend everybody together like George Soros is trying to do with the refugees, then the euro could have worked. But with all due apologies to the Nobel Prize-winning economist here, that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was the European Union was created, with a built-in self-destruct mechanism called the European Central Bank. It's a private central bank, and like all private central banks, it's a pyramid scheme. It generates more debt than money with which to pay that debt until the debt crashes the system, and that's exactly what's going on now. And everybody's out there just, it's like musical chairs. the music stops, everybody grabs a chair, or a pile of cash in this case. Now, this giant Wells Fargo fake account scandal is continuing to spread. And apparently Prudential Financial has had to suspend this program for a low-cost life insurance policy. We probably get these all in the mail, low-cost term life policy. And apparently Wells Fargo was signing up people for these life insurance policies fraudulently in order to hit their accounts for a fee every month. Now, turning over to Great Britain, this idea that Russia is to blame for everything is getting wildly out of control. Okay? Russia hacked the U.S. election. Russia nailed Jesus to the cross. Russia extincted the dinosaurs. Russia made Hillary Clinton murder Vincent Foster. Russia shot down the Hindenburg. Russia shoved that iceberg into the side of the Titanic, whatever it is. Member of Parliament in Great Britain, Ben Bradshaw, is now out there saying that Russian hackers rigged the EU referendum so that Brexit would win. It's all Russia's fault. The British people want to remain slaves of the European Central Bank and Brussels, and gosh darn those Russian hackers, they skewed the election. And apparently the British people are laughing at him as much as the American people are laughing at Hillary Clinton over this. Meanwhile, there is a push to allow EU citizens to stay in Great Britain after the Brexit. Now, we're not talking about EU citizens that are from France and Germany and Italy and places like that. We're talking about this flood of refugees that were brought on into the European Union and granted EU citizenship, ran across that Channel Tunnel, and are now in Great Britain. So there's a push to say, after the Brexit is over, you got to keep the refugees. You can't send them back. And I know Parliament's on the side with that, because they all dream of that global government. The British people have really had enough of that. We're going to take a moment to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. And we're seeing over in Germany, as I mentioned before, this is in the Express over in Great Britain, where Putin is out to get Angela Merkel, and Russia could order more migrant sex attacks in Germany. So this is the blame Russia for everything. Now they want to say that Putin is somehow orchestrating all these refugees' rapes of women across Europe. It's all Russia's fault. These migrants would be perfectly okay, but Putin calls them up late at night, and he uses Soviet mind control on them to get them to go on out and do this stuff. I mean, it really is getting ridiculous. It's amazing. If there wasn't so much at stake in terms of the well-being of the people of planet Earth and all the potential deaths from an out-of-control war, this would be laughable. Whether it's Hillary or the British Member of Parliament or the people in Germany out there trying to cover up for their own failings by saying, oh, it's all Vladimir Putin's fault. It would be laughable were it not for all the suffering that this mismanagement and this rush to a New World Order global government has caused. Now then, getting on to the issue of police brutality here in the United States of America, and it is still a problem, finding actual numbers of how many innocent, law-abiding Americans are being killed by the police has been very, very difficult. And these are obviously numbers the government doesn't think you should know about. The real media won't even address this issue of how many law-abiding Americans are being killed by the police. And by the way, it's more than all the terrorists and mass shooters are doing. But there's a story in The Guardian in Great Britain saying that the number of people killed by the police is actually twice what is being admitted to by the U.S. government. It's out of control. The police are murdering more innocent Americans than terrorists and mass shooters, and under the civil forfeiture laws, they're stealing more than all the robbers, muggers, and thieves put together. That's how completely out of control it has been. Now, as part of that long series of stories about all these mid-level government officials who are embezzling and stealing and defrauding and cheating and all the rest of it, was this one where over in Santa Cruz County, their police officer of the year, highly decorated, Officer Barney Joseph Ranmouth, has now been arrested for multiple charges of raping children. And some of it is really nasty stuff. But you know, you put on that uniform and the badge and people will just respect you. Just like you put on a white laboratory coat and people will believe you when you say humans are warming the earth. Or you put on the priest's robes and you believe them when they say whatever it is they're going to say. We live in a world of illusions, and it's time to let those illusions go. I can understand the success of the Matrix movie franchise and even the current Westworld. People understand it's a metaphor for what we're really having to deal with in this life. Now, over in Baton Rouge, officers beat up a 16-year-old boy. Apparently, he hadn't actually done anything. He's innocent. And cops held him down while one of the officers repeatedly punched him in the head. It was caught on video, and the police are saying the video is insufficient evidence to charge him. So let's look at some of these stories about corruption across America. Former volunteer firefighter arrested for embezzlement. Same one. Rodney Gentry, treasurer of the Henry Volunteer Fire Department, was arrested for embezzlement. Former La Vista Volunteer Firefighter Association financial officer for embezzlement. Ex-labor union treasurer gets probation in embezzlement case. Disbarred Belmore attorney arrested again for stealing from clients. Apparently looted $500,000 from an estate he represented. Judge in con conspiracy case arrested. Apparently he was taking kickbacks for favorable decisions. Arrest warrant issued for former DJP secretary. Officer caught embezzling, required to pay discounted restitution. He only has to pay back part of what he stole. Idaho Police Union president and wife arrested for heist on police union lodge. Minerva Town ex-worker charged with stealing public funds. Fort Myers city employee investigated for stealing from department. Ex-FPL employee in Juneau Beach office charged with embezzling $123,000. Former fire chief accused of embezzling $3,000 from Cabarrus County Department. U.S. Air Force fire chief pleads guilty to embezzling over $100,000. Hancock County, Mississippi Fire District clerk charged with embezzling $25,000. Wrongful termination lawsuit alleges millions embezzled from public utility. Woman tried to blow the whistle and was fired on that. Let's see what else we have here. FBI investigates allegations of embezzlement against Compton's deputy treasury. Plymouth man charged with embezzlement from employee pension plan. Ex-county employee faces embezzlement charge. Human services employee arrested on embezzlement and related charges. City employee sentenced to 4 years for embezzlement. Former health employees charged with embezzlement. Food handler cards being recalled. This stuff all happened in the last month. A criminal government begets a criminal society. And this desperate need for pieces of paper and ink to keep our bankers happy, to keep their lordships, the lenders, happy, has destroyed what was best in the American character. Americans used to be a people who could be proud of being Americans. Moral, just, courageous, innovative. And we've been reduced to a population looking under each other's seat cushions for spare change. All because of private central banking. Now, the PC people are back out there. Apparently, Wonder Woman has now lost her job as honorary ambassador for the United Nations because she's white. And that sends the wrong message here. Now, apparently, and this story is coming out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain, advisors are being paid £200,000 to help train teachers to address their students in the classrooms with gender-neutral terms so that they don't offend transgenders. And we're talking about classes of 7-year-olds who I don't think even know what transgender is, let alone. But they're being told they may not use the terms boys or girls. They need a gender-neutral term. So from now on, you teachers will address all your 7-year-old students by the gender-neutral term slave, because that seems to be exactly where they're heading in this Orwellian nightmare. Slave is gender-neutral. So we're all going to be using that from now on. Now, Donald Trump has asked the Department of Energy for a list of their employees who were involved with the climate change hoax. And basically, he wants a list of people who've been using taxpayer-funded money to advance the green agenda and basically commit fraud with the data and news reporting. And he wants their names so he can do his The Apprentice, you're fired on them. And here's where it gets interesting. The Department of Energy is refusing. Now, at this point, the Department of Energy sort of can kind of get away with that because as of right now, Donald Trump is a private citizen. And maybe somebody at the Department of Energy is thinking Trump will never actually be the president. Because once he is, whoever it was who said, we're going to refuse your request, they're going to be out there looking for another job, along with all those DOE people who were part of that human-caused global warming fraud. Okay, let's see. We're going to open the phone lines here again because I'm getting on down to the bottom of the talking points. If you have a Netgear router, there is yet another flaw or backdoor in there, major vulnerability that could open you up to being hacked. Netgear is rushing to release a fix, but it begs the question, are these really just flaws in their products? Are they really that bad a designer? Or are security experts stumbling over the back doors the government mandates be placed in all this hardware so they can spy on you? There seem to be an awful lot of them. And supporting that idea is this very bizarre story that came out of ZDNet. Now, Munich-based ESNC, a security research firm, released an advisory detailing a remotely exploitable bug in a security tool developed by auditing and tax giant PwC could allow an attacker to gain unauthorized access and execute payment transactions and transfer of money. PwC, instead of saying, we're going to fix this, had their attorneys send cease and desist letters to the security researchers saying, don't talk about this anymore. It seems like an odd response. Wouldn't you want to know that your system had a back door that allowed for fraudulent transfer of money? Did somebody inside PwC or their clients want the ability to make unauthorized transfers of money? Because remember, if they're pushing toward that cashless society, terrorists and drug dealers, they're still going to want their money somehow. And maybe it's not being handed to them at the street level. We know governments love to backdoor all these banking systems to give themselves special privileges in the moving of vast sums of money around the planet. Remember the BCCI scandal? It was all tangled up with CIA and drug running and terrorists, and even the Vatican Bank got caught up in that. So here we have a company that writes auditing and tax software. Its security system has a hole in it through which people can make unauthorized payments and transfers. A security company points it out, and they sick the lawyers on him to say, shut up, don't talk about it. Was it a goof or an intentional backdoor for nefarious purposes? Wouldn't be the first time either. In the realm of cryptography, code breaking, not too long ago, well, actually it was a while back, there was a company called Crypto AG. Now, we're coming up on a commercial break, and so I'm going to halt the story here. But when I come on back, I'm going to share a little something about how NSA operates and how effective they really are or are not in terms of breaking codes around the world. So we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about codes, code breaking, the National Security Agency, and why they're not really able to do much of anything. And as long as I'm talking about cryptography, I had to get out my Captain Midnight Secret Decoder badge, for those of you on BAM user. During World War II, probably most of you realize that Bletchley Park had the task of breaking the Enigma code, the German Enigma code, which was an amazing device here. Now, breaking a code is a two-step process. The first step is to define the methodology, the means by which the clear text and the key are combined to produce the encrypted message. Then you have to find the key itself. Of the two, the first is the hardest part, and that's what Alan Turing and his friends at Bletchley Park succeeded in doing. They went from that captured Enigma machine to figure out the methodology, and then Alan Turing built that machine, which they nicknamed the bomb because it was always ticking like it was about to explode, and they were able to read the German messages. Now, at the end of World War II, all the documentation at Bletchley Park was destroyed because Great Britain and the United States made presents of captured German Enigma machines to their friends around the world without bothering to mention that they could actually read the messages being encoded on these machines. Good friends. So fast forward a few years, and there's a company in Europe called Crypto AG, which is building a modern, updated version of Enigma. And the NSA went to the owner of the company and paid a generous sum of money to have a backdoor built into that machine. And when that finally surfaced, that was a big scandal. And we all know about the NSA key built into Microsoft's cyber infrastructure. They work with backdoors. They have to, especially in this day and age of computers. The reality is it's very easy to create systems of encryption the NSA can't defeat. And we actually proved that a few years back. We put out 6 encryption challenges here from the website, none of which were ever solved. And they weren't that difficult. I'm not an encryption expert, and I'm only a moderately decent programmer. It is possible. The way the NSA reads what you're doing is through backdoors. And so it begs the question, are all these flaws that are constantly being discovered by security researchers in routers and modems, are they just mistakes, or are they mandated backdoors so the government always has access to what you're doing? It's a legitimate question. Along with this question, are the ransomware writers who seem immune from the same U.S. government that insists they know that Russia hacked the election, are they working for the government? Sort of an online version of the police and civil forfeiture, just out there robbing and looting the population at will. That's a legitimate question as well. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, first, just on encryption, like any good secret, it's not about how difficult it is to crack. It's about how many people know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
More people who know the encryption, by definition, the easier it's going to be to crack.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. If you, a buddy, family, a couple friends make up an encryption code, that's going to be a lot harder for anyone else to figure out than if you buy a popular, well-known one.
Well, see, the point I was making is, and I'm going to keep you through the commercial break, so we're not going to rush here. The problem is, anything that you buy commercially probably has a backdoor in it. When DES was first put out, it was discovered it had a special packet in there that included your encryption key, encrypted with a key that only the NSA had. The same thing with the Clipper chip. That had a backdoor in it. When they were trying to sell Clipper and they were talking about the key escrow system, it was a complete and utter hoax because the encryption key for anything encoded by Clipper was inside the Clipper message. They didn't need to bother with any of that stuff. It was just a complete bluff to get you to use a government-mandated encryption system with a false promise that you had some kind of protection of your privacy, which you didn't. Kyle, stay on the line. I'm going to bring you right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Kyle in Pennsylvania about encryption, and you're absolutely right. The more people who have access to a system of encryption, the more vulnerable it becomes. They captured an Enigma off of a German submarine. The naval version of the Enigma actually only had 5 rotors to save room on the submarine, as opposed to the main Enigma, which had 6, but it was enough for them to figure out what's going on. But let's look at this in the context of the threat we are told the NSA is supposed to be dealing with, which are terrorists and occasionally drug criminals. Those are very, very small groups of people. And the fact of the matter is that if you are planning a major drug operation or a terrorist attack, the amount of effort needed to come up with a brand new, never seen before system of encryption is very minimal. That was the whole point of the exercise that I did a while back. And so this idea that they have to have access to all of our encryption to fight crime and terror is nonsense, because the real criminals and the real terrorists aren't using the systems of encryption that we, the people, are.
But Mike, if you're not doing anything wrong, then you don't have anything to be afraid of, right? I mean,
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. You're being facetious. I understand.
I'm making a point out, but that's just
yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. You can't have it both ways.
You know, I'm a private person here. I mean, Edward Snowden has already blown the whistle that NSA people will grab pictures off of your computer of your significant other in sexy poses and nude poses, and they probably, that Utah data center is now the largest private collection of amateur porn on the planet here. But I'll give you a real-world example of why I take my privacy very, very seriously. Back when I was working on the Lost TV series, I had to take a trip, and I took my business laptop with me, which had on it behind the scenes, not officially released photos from the set and the cast. And then went through TSA. TSA looked at the laptop and blah, 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 blah. And about a month later, those photos showed up on a fan's site, and I got into serious trouble. I could have lost my job. Because somebody at TSA saw the photos, put them on a jump disk, gave them to his friend who had a fan site, and they're off and running. And so I have a legitimate reason to keep my data private from a government that can't be trusted with it. Then you have incidents like the Seattle APEC, where U.S. government agents were literally breaking into computers of conference attendees, not to fight crime and terror, but to steal business secrets and give them to Bill Clinton's cronies. You know, the biggest danger to our data is the government itself, and we have every right under that Fourth Amendment to enforce privacy against a government that cannot be trusted with our personal data.
And this is going back to the Enigma code. If you remember correctly, even though they had cracked the code and knew the majority of the Germans' movements and plans, there were certain things that they knew that were going to happen that they didn't stop, that they let bombings and attacks. Because
they didn't want the Germans to know the code had been compromised. Yeah, that's one of the really hard decisions you have to make when you've penetrated somebody's communications. If you act on it, you run the risk of them realizing their communications are compromised.
And now you have, flash forward to today, where I live just outside of Philadelphia, where the world-famous school where the kid was eating Skittles, and the school board was spying on his webcam, thinking that he was taking pills, and they went and they expelled the kid until it turned out, they were spying on him in his home. You're going to pretty much let the world know that you have this ability for kids eating Skittles. The stupidity of these people is astounding. I don't
well, the part that I think freaked out the parents wasn't that they were watching the kid eating Skittles, is that these school officials had the means to be watching the kids in the privacy of their room engaging in other activities in various states of undress, and that's about as polite as I can put it. There is a commercial out for this gizmo you plug into your car. I think it's called Hum. And part of it's being sold as emergency roadside service, which I think is really good. But they've got this one commercial where your daughter has just got her driver's license, and by plugging this in, you can set limits as where she can go, and just, I wouldn't do that to my kid. If you don't have a relationship with your child based on trust and respect, all the computer surveillance in the world isn't going to fix it. And then of course we have these dolls out for Christmas. That plug into your Wi-Fi and send everything your child is talking about to a Defense Department contractor. It's just completely out of control here.
Well, and that's what people don't realize is that when you hear even your home security companies, ADT, Alarm Me, whatever, that they're not individual companies. They all use third-party companies to do the monitoring, to do the watching, and those third-party companies are 100% hooked up with the government. So if you're thinking if there's any device in your home that has a camera, a microphone, any sort of surveillance device that's not somehow getting back to, the least people who you would trust with that information, then you're out of your mind. Because all of these are no matter what device you're using, no matter what company, what product, they're all using standard issue, industry standard equipment and companies, and it's one huge drain just sucking up all of this data and information. I got to tell you, in my case, that's a huge waste of time and money, because all the cameras are showing are the back and front entrances. What are they going to do? Watch the pineapple grow? The pineapple cam, courtesy of the United States government, the sweetest smelling government in the world. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Good Shepherd.
Oh yeah, I love it.
They have a great scene where they go through and they have this. It's kind of a plot throughout the whole movie where they have just picture and slight audio of this place in I think Spain or whatever, and they analyze every little detail, the sound of the bells in the back,
yes,
a certain cupboard that's made, this and that, and even though the pineapple trees and the garden gnome. The people who are theoretically doing the analytics on this have the ability to glean a tremendous amount of information just from the smallest details.
Yeah, but remember the storyline of The Good Shepherd? They were fed that photo on that tape as a tease, to tangle them up and get them looking at X while Y was going on to try and draw in and compromise somebody. In terms of a home security system, again, all they're going to know is when we're here and when we're not, and they already know that from our smartphones. And like I said, if they want to pay somebody to be looking through my security camera at my back porch, as the butterflies fly around, I'm opposed to this total surveillance.
It doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter
at the end of the day because they have satellites. They have satellites that can determine who you specifically are from the gait of your walk. They can look down on you and see who's walking, and they have the ability with facial recognition, the gait of your walk.
Now, it's funny you should say that. It's funny you should say that because they just had a story on the TV about how Facebook has a new facial recognition system out, and they're saying it's 70% accurate. You couldn't go to court with a 70% assurance rate on that stuff. And they've had this facial recognition stuff going on in airports for all these years. They've never caught a real terrorist with it. They keep bagging all these innocent people that the system confuses for somebody else. And as far as the gait is concerned, if you stub your toe, twist your ankle, you're suffering from gout, your gait changes. And it strikes me as a huge waste of time and money, and maybe that's the whole point. The security industrial complex is all about grabbing more money and power and authority without needing to actually accomplish anything of any use. Certainly this idea that the NSA has all this money for these data centers to scoop up all the phone calls and the data of people who aren't actually doing anything, which complicates the problem of actually of analysis and finding anything. It seems to be more about the money and the power and the prestige than about actually getting anything done. And again, going back, if they've got all this wonderful technology, why can't they find those ransomware writers?
Well, and the best technology in the world is only as good as the people that are using it. And we saw about 5 years ago when the gentleman broke the NSA body scanners by strapping guns to the side of him and not anywhere on the front of his body, and they just looked like shadows. They just melted into that black part, and he was able to walk right by. So, you can have the greatest technology in the world, but if you don't have, first of all, you're going to build a smarter mouse. You're going to get a smarter mouse.
Basically, the stuff is designed and built to make money, not necessarily to actually do anything useful. Anyway, listen, Kyle, going to let you go. Got one more phone call we're going to take. Steve in California, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hey, Michael, I'm catching the show a little bit late. You may have already discussed this, but I'm just looking at the RBN website, and I'm trying to figure out this Michael Moore character. Seems like he was for Trump at one time. Now he's against Trump, and he's trying to organize a revolution against him and disrupt the whole inauguration process. What do you make of this guy?
Well, I'd be very careful about using the word revolution because protests at an inauguration do not a revolution make. But all of these liberalologists are brushing up against existing United States law in terms of what they're doing, whether it's threatening the electors and so forth. But again, Moore seems to be part of this attempt to create this illusion that Donald Trump is an illegitimate president because a bunch of snowflakes and buttercups and crybabies are throwing tantrums on the ground. And the reality is that Donald Trump won the election by the rules everybody agreed to play by going on in, and now Hillary and the liberalologists are screaming that the rules must be changed retroactively to give them the victory. Apparently the participation trophy isn't good enough for Hillary.
Right. Well, I noticed also, I think it was on one of the other websites, talked about how the Senate now, Mitch McConnell is trying to organize rally the troops there to say it's illegitimate, it's invalid, the elections that Russia hacked it, of course. I'm blown away that, here the CIA has come out and said they show no proof, offer no proof to say that these allegations are true. The White House has even said, no, we don't have any proof. It's a hunch, but they have no proof to offer. And you need something called proof, evidence, when you make these accusations. And I just see that
normally, yes. It's just guilt by acclamation, the attitude they've got out there is that this accusation of Russia aiding Donald Trump's election is so serious that even innocence cannot be used as a defense. And again, if Hillary is making a power play at the Electoral College or some other means, part of that is they have to make it look like Trump isn't really legitimate. They're not getting the traction on it. I'll tell you the one thing that really worries me is that Trump is still going around the country on his thank you tour. I think it is a huge, huge mistake. He's up in Wisconsin tonight because if somebody could get a shot off at Trump before next Monday, then the Electoral College could hand the White House to Hillary Clinton, and everybody would say they really didn't have any choice, did they?
Well, wouldn't they just hand it off to Pence?
No, not until Trump wins the Electoral College. Then a Donald Trump assassination puts Pence into the White House. If Trump is assassinated before next Monday, before the Electoral College actually meets, then the Electoral College, all of the Trump delegates are instantly unbound.
Well, it just kind of looks like the Senate is trying very hard to nullify this election and then have a new election. It just kind of looks that way. Do you believe that's
I've been hearing that as well, that they're talking about canceling this election and having another one next summer and hiring twice as many vote riggers. But again, the reason for all of this, it isn't that official Washington loves Hillary Clinton. They absolutely hate her guts. But after 30 years of narcocracy, Hillary Clinton has got all of these politicians by the short and curlies. Everyone who used the Clinton Foundation as a slush fund or a laundry. She's got the CIA because of the cocaine smuggling that was going on out of Arkansas or into Arkansas from Nicaragua. She's got the blackmail goods. And early in the year, She was sending out the message, if I don't get the White House, I'm going to start ruining people and bring down the government if I have to. And that's what's going on right now. All right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, Fox News just ran into the story here where the propaganda against Iran is now cranking on up, and they had this video of Iran's leader meeting with a terrorist leader. That was the banner headline. Didn't even have any names. Iran's leader meets with terrorist leader. And they show these two guys getting together and shaking hands and everything. And the story is that Iran's leader has met with the head of this group in Palestine that is working for Palestinian statehood. But he's a terrorist because the U.S. State Department says he is. That's the entire basis. Our State Department says he's a terrorist, therefore he is, and you shouldn't question that. And so they're ramping up that as well. It is getting crazy out there. Now then, latest survey is showing that Americans don't really trust scientists on GMOs. And you shouldn't anyway. Science isn't about trust. Science isn't a belief system. It's not a religion. Science is about scientific method, and the core of scientific method is reproducibility of results. You're not supposed to take any scientist's word for anything, no matter how many white lab coats they're wearing. The reason there is a scientific method is the recognition that individual scientists are just as corruptible as individual politicians or individual clergy. And scientific method is a system outside human agency to validate results, to sort what's really going on in the world versus what is being sold by politicians. The reason Galileo was ultimately vindicated was because other astronomers could duplicate his results with their telescopes. That's what reproducibility is. Certainly one of the hallmarks of the global warming fraud has been this insistence that we accept their word as to what's going on without any verification. Remember when Hadley Climate Research Unit came on out with this, oh, the world is warming, we've got all this temperature data, and other climatologists said, can we see your raw data and your methodology? And Hadley CRU said, no, you can't. You can't look at what we did. Just look at the final graph, that's all you need to know. They said, why can't we look at the raw data? Oh, we ran out of room on our computer and we deleted all the raw data. Here, look at this very fancy chart we produced at huge expense and take our word for it. So people shouldn't trust scientists just because they're scientists. They shouldn't trust politicians just because they're politicians. Verify the facts for yourself, regardless of where you are. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And as we watch Hillary and the liberologists running around like a chicken with its head cut off, not realizing they're dead, not willing to fall down just yet, just going to flop around, make a lot of noise for a bit. We need to remember that Thomas Jefferson once said that the highest duty of every American citizen is to keep themselves fully informed so they can make good choices, which is why it has been amazing to see the corporate media arguing the position that Americans should not have ever heard about how the DNC and Hillary cheated Bernie Sanders in the primary, and taking the position that if the American people had only paid attention to what the corporate media said about Hillary and Trump, that Hillary would have won, that that's all you needed to know, that you shouldn't be fully informed, that you know too much. That's literally what they're saying. The corporate media and the government are worried that you, the American people, know too much. Certainly the thing that you know and should remember first and foremost is how much you've been lied to your entire lifetime. Saddam's nukes, Assad's sarin gas, Russia hacking the election, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor. The attack on the USS Liberty was poor eyesight and bad weather. Lusitania didn't have weapons. Pearl Harbor was a complete surprise. On and on and on. Humans are warming the planet. Vaccines are perfectly safe. How much more do you have to be lied to before you realize that's all this government and corporate media know how to do? And they're in a panic right now. Apparently, even this late in the evolution of the independent media, government and corporate media were still absolutely convinced that Americans only thought what corporate media told them to think. And Trump's landslide, overwhelming election fraud victory was the watershed, the wake-up call. And now they're in a panic because they know when it unravels, it's going to unravel all the way. All the lies will come on out. Talking about government lies, talking about government corruption and deception is now acceptable in polite company. And that's a very, very dangerous situation for the money junkies. Talking about how private central banking doesn't serve the country or its people. Talking about Wall Street fraud, which has become epidemic and constant, and people are now understanding it's always been that way. It's unraveling. And I keep seeing these parallels between what this nation is going through right now with the independent media and what the Soviet Union was going through with the samizdat just months before it all completely fell apart and they had an opportunity to start a new country called the Russian Republics. I'd like to see Trump in the White House. I'd like to see possibly this country changing course and going back. But it may all fall apart even with Trump in the White House. It certainly will if Hillary stages a soft coup. It will be the end of the United States as we have known it. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. I'm going to be back tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Have yourself a good evening. Remember, you are part of the independent media. Take what you learn here. Take what you learn from the website. Share it with everybody that you know. Don't forget to check out the Pro Pure ads at Republic Broadcasting. There's a Christmas special going on right now, 25% off. We'll see you tomorrow. Aloha, America.